Welcome everyone to Give a Shift. I am Nancy Leeds Gribble, one of the co-hosts.
And I'm your other co-host, Alicia Ziegler.
Yes, and we are excited you're here today. We have another amazing podcast ahead for you. And today we welcome our special guest, Dr. Lori Davis. Welcome.
Woohoo!
Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're so happy you're here. Dr. Lori Davis is a clinical instructor of psychology at Weill Cornell Medical College and has a private practice in New York City, where she specializes in anxiety disorders and PTSD trauma. She has an Instagram page at Dr. Lori Davis, where she shares tips and strategies for anxiety and talks about her own struggles and victories with anxiety also. Thank you so much for being here, coming in. You are an hour ahead of me, right, in New York?
Yes, an hour ahead. Yes.
Yes.
I had
and Alicia's
a few times to make sure I didn't mess up the time.
Yes, I've been to New York. I just went for the first time last November, and I thought I'd been in a big city, and then my eyes went like this. I was like, what? Like soaking it in was incredible. Have you been there your whole life?
I've been in New York my whole life. It's like stimulus overload. It's like if you get anxious and you come into New York, you don't know where to look first. It's noisy and there's so much activity going on. So it definitely, it takes some getting used to if you don't live here. So, or some people live here for a while and then they say, I need to get out of here because it's too stimulating.
It's like, I don't need a Vermont farm to calm down. I'm just going to thrust myself right into it.
That's right.
Exactly.
Chaotic here. Yeah.
Well, we were just all sharing how we are in different locations and how we kind of met. And I was on Instagram and scrolling, right? And I had to pretty much stop the scroll because what caught me the minute I got to your page was you saying, and I have anxiety too. And I was like, what? Who is this? So I was like, okay, let me find out who this is. And then I find out that you're a therapist. And I'm like, did she just admit to the world she has anxiety too? That's crazy. And then I also thought, but wow, she gets it. Like she gets it, right? And I felt honestly this very instant connection and trust, like because you put it out there. So we would love for you to kind of share your journey of your own personal experience and how you got to where you do what you do now and putting it out there into the world.
So I can honestly say I've been anxious pretty much my whole life. Mm-hmm. And like many other people, I didn't really tell anyone about it. Yeah. So I actually had another career. I reinvented myself in my 30s, early 30s. I worked in publishing and I went back and I got my doctorate in psychology. And I wanted to specialize in anxiety, of course, because I'd always been anxious and I wanted to learn more about it. But I ended up doing a lot of work in trauma and PTSD. And so I started doing clinical research and started a private practice and then, started treating more and more people with anxiety. But I never said, I'm really anxious to anyone. There were rare exceptions where I would sort of divulge, well, I know a little bit of what anxiety can be like. We all get anxious at times. We're all wired to be anxious and so forth. So years passed and, I have a full-time practice. I teach and I supervise, graduate psychology students. And then I started looking at social media and I thought, well, I can't do that. I'm too anxious. And that's for other people to do. So I started seeing all, therapists, wonderful people on there, people like you, informing people of all kinds of things. And so one day I thought, well, what would happen if I literally took my phone and put the camera on and just practiced and just tried to do a reel? And I was like a deer caught in headlights. I still get really anxious. Like right now, I'm very anxious, but I learned how to tolerate it. And so I did a reel and I said, well, I can't really post that. And so a few weeks later, I just made a reel and I said, what do I have to lose? And this is sort of my mantra in life. It's never too late to be who you might have been. Number one, always recreate yourself. And two, you can still be anxious and do things. And so I thought, well, if I'm espousing that, if I'm preaching that, I should try to do that myself. So I put the reel up, and it was terrible. It was so bad. It was horrible. And even my friends and family were like, it's a good start, but you really look frozen. And I was. So anyway, after a while, I started becoming more honest about my own anxiety. Instead of just giving tips and strategies, I would say, I'm anxious too. And that's kind of how it began. And it's been about 1.5 years. And more, I'm sort of saying, well, this is what I'm struggling with this week. And people have been writing from, all over the world. I've been anxious my whole life, or I just became anxious at menopause, or I just had a kid and now I'm really anxious. I can't juggle everything in life.
Yeah.
Women, men, adolescents, young adults, elderly people are writing in. They're like, I never could tell anyone about it. So I felt really good about that. I felt like I was contributing something. And it kind of reinforced, again, my mantra that, people can set goals in life, whatever it is, whether you want to be a trainer or a teacher or a psychologist or an actress, singer, whatever it is, you can have symptoms. And, mental health, obviously, through time has been very stigmatized. And I think social media has been really helpful in that people are getting out there and saying, this is what I'm dealing with in life. And look, some people react negatively to it, but a lot of people have been very supportive. And it's a vehicle to teach people and normalize things. So my journey is continuing. So I went from sort of a very anxious, I was very shy when I was young, and I always was very sociable. So I always had a lot of friends, but I was always shy. And I always was anxious, but I didn't really know what it was. I just felt like something was off. My heart would race, or if I was away from home too long, I would be uncomfortable. Like I wanted to go back to home base. And that's a lot of what people still talk about in adulthood, whether they go on a vacation or they're nervous at work or in a relationship. So my journey, hopefully, is becoming other people's journey. And as I connect with more people, I'm actually growing and becoming less anxious myself. Although I'm trying new things. So then there are new challenges in my trajectory. And
Beautiful.
I hope it continues, because I think there are so many people suffering from anxiety now, particularly because of COVID and the pandemic. I mean, everybody was stuck at home, and being at home is actually all the time is basically promotes more anxiety, being isolated, not being out, literally being outside and so forth. So, and all the worries about the world, everybody's anxiety got kicked up. So this is a good time to be talking about anxiety and to talk about not only what you can do for yourself, but normalizing it for your loved ones, what research is out there, books, products, and so forth.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Did you grow up as an only child?
I did not. I was the middle I am the middle child.
Okay, so you're the middle. She's like, I got rid of the others now.
But I definitely have them, if you believe in sort of birth order research, as being the middle child, always sort of like keep the peace, don't make too many waves, be very accommodating. And I've actually found that in my practice, as well as with friends and people I've met on social media, often people who are, middle children get anxious because they're so used to kind of keeping it like this and keeping things to themselves and maneuvering around other people. It's not always true, but it's often true. So
container. It sounds like a container.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I'm an only child, but my mom is the oldest of 3 daughters. And then I thought, so when you were saying that, I was thinking, is my Aunt Julie like, well, I could, keep the peace, making sure everybody's getting along and loves each other. Yeah.
Great diplomat, because, again, I'm not an expert on birth order, but, usually the oldest child gets a lot of attention. First child out of the gate. And so everybody's sort of rallying around. Sometimes the youngest child doesn't get as much, or sometimes they get a lot because they're the baby of the family. So the middle child is kind of like floating around in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Anxiety is like you're like predisposed. Like, is a predisposition to it? Do you?
That's a good question. And I think people ask me about that so often. anxiety and really many, with the exception of a few mental health disorders, often it's a combination of biology and life, early life experiences. And so it's impossible. You can never know exactly, what factored in, but usually it's a combination of both. Anxiety tends to run in families. Worry tends to run in families. Depression tends to run in families. ADD, we can go on and on. There's usually a genetic component. But, messages you get early on in life about the world, like, is it safe to go out into the world? Do you feel equipped to go out into the world? What messages you internalized, for example, at home about the world, about people? Those are so important.
Yeah.
In addition to, the genetic piece. So when you think back, in your childhood, you probably can think of messages you got early on.
Mm-hmm.
Don't trust people too much. Trust everyone. Don't tell anyone anything, right? You can do anything. Well, no, you should, play it safe. And so all of those messages factor into how we kind of perceive ourselves and how comfortable we are out in the world. Trying new things or just traveling or going on public transportation or starting a career or having a family, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
it makes so much sense. And, you can see patterns, and obviously it's your field. So you definitely, I'm sure, see the patterns of anxiety masking itself in some form of overeating, over drinking, things like that, because people get so anxious about maybe they have to go into a scenario they're not comfortable with, or they're at a scenario when the food is there and they're just like, I'll just eat this and stuff my anxiety, or I'll drink it away. That's common, probably more common than people think. They think the behavior is the problem.
Yes.
The root of anxiety, correct?
Yeah, it is. And even, I've worked with people who overexercise, and they're like, you can relate to this. So, well, it's totally healthy behavior. I work out once or twice a day, and I can't miss a day. And I'm all for exercise. It's great for you. But, when it becomes sort of obsessive and you feel like you can't exist without it, it's a way to sort of quell, worry and anxiety. Yeah, as it is eating, shopping. I've worked with people who become compulsive shoppers, out of anxiety. Not eating is another thing, right?
True.
A way to try to control feelings, to try to control, caloric intake and so forth. There's so many ways it manifests itself, but nail biting, hair twirling, we can go on. There's so many ways people try to deal with it. Not necessarily, like you said, even knowing I'm having anxiety. What's that really about? That's the most important thing. Why is the anxiety kicking up at this time of your life, right? So people will come in like, all of a sudden, I have panic attacks. All of a sudden, I'm worrying all the time. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Like nothing happened in my life.
Right.
And then sort of, talk about it can happen when you have a buildup of stress over years or months, and you just hold it in, and all of a sudden, like anything else, you hit a wall. So people say, all of a sudden I started having panic attacks, but it's not like I just lost my job last week, or it's not like my relationship fell apart last week. Why is it happening now? It can be just a buildup of stress and not dealing with what's going on underneath. So it's so important to stay
I was going to say that's beautiful, and because I had done the same thing quite a few years ago. I remember having my first panic attack.
Really?
In the kitchen. And after the panic attack, I was having the worst anxiety about driving.
Yep.
And it's my job. So I was like, we gotta figure this out. But then I was like, and every once in a while I'll catch myself still having a little like, you're too close to me, back up. And I'm like, I used to not care. This person would be like, it's LA. Everybody's like, if you're not touching bumpers, we haven't met yet, right?
Right. Well, that's like New York also. People are like in your, not so much since COVID, but before, everyone's like this far away. So
yeah.
So
what? So that's interesting that you would say that, because for me, I always tried. I've been managing, I guess, my PTSD, which I didn't even know I had until I was 30. But my trauma for 20 years through exercise. But I hadn't really dealt with all of that, and that was having, absolutely, even though everything felt like it was going great, and I was working 4 jobs, and I was going to the gym, I was doing all of that, and then all of a sudden that anxiety maximized. And I remember thinking, oh no, this is huge, because then you feel debilitated, and you're not sure if you're going to have it again, or how to manage it, or you're like, and where is the book? Where is Dr. Lori?
Right. That's the cycle. It's really scary, because once it happens once, then there's the anticipatory anxiety. What if it happens again? And where am I? Like, is it going to happen at work, or am I going to be in the car? Mm-hmm. And then it sets off that cycle where the anxiety just reinforces itself. And then you're like, oh no, I don't want to do anything because I'm, kind of panicking. So did you, without getting into any detail, because that's your...
Oh, no, I'm fully...
Did you figure out sort of like, well, why is this happening right now? You said everything was going great, and,
Yeah, and then I realized, like, I had been doing projects, but not really managing the stress accordingly.
Right.
I was like, we need to journal. We need to get back to some breathing exercises. Yeah. We're not grounded. We think we're grounded because we're busy, but we're not, like... Put your feet on Mother Earth and take a breath and, like, just exist with yourself and know that everything is going to be okay, no matter what. Like, you made it this far, we're all going to be okay.
How do you do that? Everybody kind of grounds themselves in different ways. I'm always curious to hear, like, because I'm always trying to learn new things for myself. Like,
well, as an actor too, we do a lot of hand squeezes before an audition.
Squeeze and release.
Because you have the tension and the relaxation, but if we don't have a lot of time before we got to go in and meet strangers. So we really practice breath. But I think the anxiety came from, I realized I hadn't taken, like, full deep breath, like, just be and breathe. And so breathing, but we do a lot of that. And I like a little TNF action. I like to touch and remind and kind of just regroup. When I don't have a lot of time. When I have time, I give myself like a 10-minute meditation, even if it's guided on YouTube and someone's talking to me and saying nice things to me with birds in the background. I'm like, fine. Anything is better than what the monkey mind, because I think the monkey mind can really set people off.
Yeah, and it's so difficult to turn it off. Once it starts going, it's like, and then you're trying to sleep at night, and it's like, just stop, just like turn it off. So I do box breathing.
Oh, do you? I love it. Right?
It's so easy. It's free. It's easy, and it works.
You can explain it to our listeners, because I don't think that we've actually had anybody.
We have not.
No.
So box breathing is a very simple way to kind of get a emotion regulation reset. So basically, you sit there. I always tell patients and other people, like, do a body check first, because we all, especially if we're on the computer working or running around, we start to walk around like this, shoulders in like this, and then you're compressing this whole area, your breathing area. So I always say, okay, put your shoulders back first, because I know I sit like this.
Me too.
You both have very good posture. I don't. So shoulders back. Relax the the neck area, the trapezius muscles. And then I take my hands and I make sure they're open, because I can, go like this, and I do this first. And I just make sure
she's doing a cute little wiggle.
I know, right?
This is definitely a YouTube checkout.
I know, right? And
for the podcasters.
So here's the box breathing. So basically, breathe in for 4. Hold it for 4. 4 more. So don't let the breath out. Hold it in. Hold it for 4 more. Let it go out for 4. Then hold it for another 4. And get into a rhythm with that. So it feels a little uncomfortable at first, because you're taking the breaths and then you're holding it. Then release it and then hold it again. And I find if I do that 5 times, I can start to feel myself, everything just sort of falls like that. The other thing that's really helpful is the projector screen exercise. Do you guys know this one? So I do this one all the time. So you could be anywhere. You could be, you could do it in the car, but you have to do it in your mind, not actually looking at something else. But So let's say you're in traffic. You're in LA and you're sitting in traffic and you're like about to be late for an appointment, right? So you start to feel that feeling. So there you are. You visualize yourself. That's the big screen. You are where you are now. Now make a little screen. Like those TVs where you have like an insert screen. So now visualize another screen, and you're in your safe and neutral place. For me, I'm sitting by. Like I'm in a shady but warm area. There's like a bubbling brook, and I'm sitting on the rocks. There's not a sound anywhere, and I'm by myself. And so in that little screen, I visualize my other space while I'm in this chaotic space. And I start to focus my attention on that. So like Nancy, what would that be for you?
It would be probably the ocean, sitting by the ocean by myself.
Right. And what else is in that screen? So the sky.
The sky, the sand, white sand, my feet. See my feet
in the water or in the warm sand?
In the water.
Okay, so can you visualize that in the screen?
Yeah.
So wherever you are, you can do it now. Take your attention and I'm visualizing the beach now.
Yeah.
And you can start to feel yourself kind of come down a bit. Like Alicia, where would you be?
On a mountain. I'm a mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah, she's trekking up like a hill.
So you're moving?
I'm at the top. I got my backpack. I made it. I'm good. I see it. I see the whole valley. Yeah.
Okay. So that's your space.
I already feel calm just saying it out loud.
That's right. So now when you're in a situation where you're feeling the anxiety creep up, or you're rushing, or you feel pressured, the feeling of too many things to do, just take your focus and just visualize that little screen. And it helps to kind of balance things out. So those are some of the things that I've learned to do for anxiety that actually work.
Yeah.
I mean, they remind me of like tactile things that would be.
Yes, that's the other thing. Like I have like therapy dough, and it smells like a spa. Yeah. And you just if I'm on a call, I can like squeeze it or whatever, and kind of like, yeah, the tactile sensation is very soothing. So
it seems to me, like hearing it from you now, that it's a lot of a safety. That anxiety comes from people not feeling safe.
Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. So we are all wired to be anxious, right? We have anxiety for a reason. Anxiety is supposed to make us feel safe. Any negative feeling is a trigger. It's a signal for us that something doesn't feel right. And so when anxiety calls, you're feeling a threat of sorts. You're not feeling safe. It could be an internal threat. It could be there's a storm coming. It could be someone's chasing you up the street. It could be threat of war. Whatever it is, your body and your brain are sensing a threat. They're sensing danger. You're right. Now, in certain people, the alarm bell for anxiety, it goes off too often. It goes off all the time. And so the person thinks they're in danger all the time. So they don't want to go to a party. They don't want to go to work. They want to stay at home. They feel like they can't breathe. They feel like they're going to die. You don't die from anxiety. It feels like you might pass out or die, and it feels horrible.
Right.
So it's a signal. So is anger. Anger is a signal. It's telling you, I don't feel comfortable in a situation with a person, in a place, in a job, whatever it is. These are all signals. So anxiety is a signal about safety. You're absolutely right. It could be around a person, a thing. It doesn't matter. So I always tell people, don't ignore that. Ask yourself, what does feel unsafe in your life? It doesn't have to be that a grizzly bear is chasing you. It could be you're in a situation that doesn't feel emotionally safe for you. There's just been a buildup of stress where you felt ungrounded, and it catches up with you. And that's the easiest way to look at it. Instead of saying, what's wrong with me? Why is this happening? Why can't I make it better? And call yourself names, which is what I used to do and occasionally still do. It's like, be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
I'm getting a message. Let me listen to the message and try to figure it out and be kind to myself while I'm going through this process. So you're right. People don't feel safe, even if they don't realize they don't feel safe.
It's interesting to hear that. Like I have, and I didn't know it for a long time because I masked it with a whole lot of things not going to discuss on the podcast today, growing up. But I have social anxiety, almost severe social anxiety, which is due to my son, and he's got a whole host of other things. But I didn't know that was what was going on. But I still do get extremely like anxious going into a social situation, even sometimes with people I know. So that's where I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, I know these people, but I still get very, very anxious. And the running joke is that my husband is like my whoopee blanket, like, go first. You're my comfort thing, because he's a social butterfly. And I'm like, you go first, and then I'm coming in. And
right.
You
your buffer, your security blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's weird when you say the safety part, because I really do get it, even with people I know, like friends. And I'm like, they know everything about me. Like, what on earth am I getting like so anxious about? And I have to practice stuff and be like, everything's okay. I am worthy. They like me as I am, like silly things like that. But I have to do that to calm myself down to go.
And that it's good that you go, because that's the most important lesson about anxiety, is that avoidance feeds symptoms. That's a fact. It's well studied. So if you avoid the things you're afraid of, whether it's a social situation or anything in life, it will just feed the symptoms. And people are like, no, but I feel better when I don't go. You know, I feel relief. You feel initial relief, but you're not really treating the anxiety over time. But Nancy, what comes with that is the question, you know, you say, well, what am I afraid of? I know some of these people. There's always some, again, underlying fear.
Yeah.
Something unsafe. What if people think I'm this? Or what if I say something like that? Even with people, you know, people have this within their family. There's always something underneath. And just sitting down, taking out a piece of paper and saying, what am I really afraid will happen? And for a lot of people with social anxiety, I treat a lot of patients with social anxiety, and I have it a little bit too. What is the fear? I'm going to say something dumb. People will think I'm stupid. People will think I'm weird. I won't be respected anymore. People will reject me. You know, and the list goes on and on of all the potential reasons for social anxiety. Sometimes it's rooted in little events in the past, like childhood, somebody made fun of you, or like you embarrassed yourself at the school play or something like that. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's just, you know, you have some doubt about yourself, and it keeps kicking up. So approaching what you're doing is so great. But then trying to figure out what is the literal fear, and writing down honestly, like, what am I really afraid people will think? And that will help you a lot, because then you can challenge that. Did that ever actually happen? No. People tell me I'm really nice. People like to be around me. They're my friends. They keep inviting me over. So I must be doing something right. But you need to get to that core fear to understand it better. Because I do think knowledge and understanding is power.
Yeah, 100%.
To anything in life. Yeah.
It's interesting, and people will, and I'm sure if you have it, people are like, no, how can you have social anxiety? Like, you go out and you go to networking meetings and you put yourself out there. And I'm like, that comes with a lot of work. And it's like I'm exhausted after the fact.
Well, you can't think it. I mean, I'm a trained psychologist, and you're doing a really good job, because I don't see it at all. It's really not coming through for either of you. So we're both very composed.
I think my biggest anxiety is going by myself, which I don't kind of know where that came from, but I adopted that one. That's been I'm like, well, I'll go, but I don't want to go by myself. And I'm like, why? I'm usually the one that walks in the door is like, hey, I'm here. I'm Wes.
that may be, I'm not going to play shrink, but that could be a way of you but it's approaching it head on. You know what I mean? Instead of not doing it, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to let everyone know I'm here.
I'm here.
Sort of overcompensation of
100%. But I think
do that.
Yeah, then it's so funny to make yourself feel like it's like, you don't need to point it out for me. I'll point it out for myself. Right.
You can control it that way.
Right. So, and that's
you're deciding. You're
in control.
You're deciding to do it that way. You're in control. So it's so fascinating. The humans, I mean, I can't think of a more interesting thing to do. Because people are so fascinating.
They are.
We suffer, but the psyche is so fascinating, the way that people maneuver around issues they have or symptoms they have. And, we're actually really resilient. But I also tell people, like, anxiety, fear, PTSD, whatever, it's not pleasant. And I think there's a shift right now. I'm just going to make a statement. I think there's a shift right now, and be grateful for everything, and everything's okay. And you know what? Gratitude is great. It's a wonderful thing, right? But you don't have to be grateful that you have anxiety or trauma. Like, you can say I have a good life or I have great friends, but this is really painful. This is really hard for me. And you have to validate that too. You can work on it and you can move forward, but you also need to be kind and not pretend it isn't there. And a lot of people, I should be grateful. My life's so great. What do I have to be anxious about? What do I have to be depressed about? What do I have to, whatever. And, it's hard. Life is hard sometimes. We all have our challenges. And it's okay to say, I am struggling right now. I'm going to do everything I can to move forward. So I try to practice what I preach with that. Again, I'm not always successful. I have days where I'm like super anxious and I'm like, get it together. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, you can do better than this. Does that help my anxiety? No, it makes it worse. Invariably, it makes me feel so much. Then I'm anxious, and then I'm like upset with myself too. So that doesn't help.
And then do you do one of those observant tools where you're like, and great, now everybody can see that I'm anxious.
Yes. Like right now. So yeah. So I think
or trying to figure it out, right? Like, why am I anxious? Like, will make you more like crazy anxious. Like you said, everything is good, everything is fine. I think like the everything is fine is like such a
nothing. Unless you're on like a vacation on like some island and everything's being like served to you and the weather's perfect and
it's free.
Yeah.
That's like, no, I'm sorry, everything's not perfect. By the way, a lot of people who are sort of perfectionistic and extreme goal setting, go sort of mentalities get anxiety. Things are not enough. You've got to move faster. You've got to set 5 new goals this week. You didn't do enough this week. Why are you being lazy today? Why are you sitting there watching Netflix today? Well, you should.
Yeah.
That also is just so much material to be anxious and feel pressured all the time. So there's all this physiological arousal, as we call it, the heart's racing, that go mode. All you're doing is just, cranking up your nervous system.
Exacerbating. Yeah.
Like crazy. Yeah.
How would someone know? Like, obviously, like you said, everybody gets anxious at some point, right? Like, I mean, you are going to overcome public speaking. You're going to get on podcasts. You're going to like do something. Everybody gets anxious. How do we know when it's become chronic, right? And it's like, okay, I'm not dealing with this very well. I need to go seek some counseling, some help, or something like that.
Yes.
This is bigger than me.
I think that is always the best question. And I think that a lot of people just try to push through it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll wait another month, or this will pass, or it's nothing. I think when you get to a point where you are not able to do the things you need to do in your life. Now, there are a lot of people who have high functioning anxiety and depression, and they can do most of the things. If you're really not able to enjoy things because you're so busy feeling physically awful, if you're avoiding things that you used to love, if you're not going out with your friends any longer, if you're freezing at work, you have a presentation and you literally have a panic attack and you have to leave. If you can't manage your symptoms and live your life the way you want to be living it, then it's time to think about it, at least in terms of going to therapy. And I don't think therapy is the be all and end all. There are plenty of other ways to approach issues in life. So I don't walk around preaching, therapy is everything. I go to therapy. I've been in therapy. It's been really helpful for me. And I am a therapist. I do believe in the process. If you can meditate, if you can hike up a mountain and feel good and contemplate your life doing that, if you can exercise healthfully and get perspective, if you can go to a clergy person and that helps you, if you can talk to a friend, a partner, If you can sit by yourself and figure it out, or if you can journal to a point, that's all fine. But if you hit a wall and you've done everything that you know how to do, and you've read books, and you still wake up every morning feeling a sense of dread, you have to really motivate yourself to get out of bed and to do things. It's really time to reach out to get help, which leads to the second question is, where do people get help? And since the pandemic, a lot of people are virtual. So therapy is omni-available now. And therapy can be expensive in certain urban areas, whether you have insurance or not. Some people don't have health insurance. So there are always places to go, like local universities are a great way. They often have, teaching hospitals often have, a very high level clinic where you can get therapy for free or a reduced fee. There are a lot of organizations in the United States and abroad, anxiety and depression associations, where you can Google and find a therapist in your zip code. And people go, well, I don't want to sign on for like 10 years of therapy, and I do cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a very present focus. What's happening in your life right now? What's going on? What are your symptoms? What are your thoughts? It doesn't mean that in 5 sessions, you're not going to have anxiety or depression or, figure out your whole career, but it's a shorter term of therapy. And the goal is to teach you skills. It's all about thought patterns. We all have thoughts about ourselves. I'm going to end up alone. I'm going to get fired from every job. I'm never going to meet my potential. And it's working with those thought processes that kind of fuel anxiety, depression, anger, compulsive behaviors, and so forth. So it's sort of the model is the therapist teaches you strategies, and then you learn how to do it yourself. So there are different kinds of therapy out there. There's somatic therapy, bodily therapies for trauma, for anxiety, EMDR. There's so many choices now. Meditation, I think, is just an amazing thing. I'm really lousy at it. I can't. I keep trying. I can't really. My mind is too racy to kind of really settle in. But I'm still trying. Yoga. I do yoga. That helps me so much. So therapy is available. People also ask about medication. Should I go on medication for anxiety, right? And that's up to you. Studies show that, if you do go on medication, you don't do medication without therapy, because if you don't figure out what it's all about, you're basically just throwing medication at your symptoms. And then when you go off of it, you have the same issues. So you need to figure out what's going on in your life that is kicking up in your anxiety. And it also could be just midlife. Again, a lot of women going through perimenopause, menopause, the hormones change. Then you don't sleep as much. Then you drink more coffee, which is definitely promotes anxiety. So the confluence of all those things, right, can get you into a sort of a new anxiety phase of, I was never anxious before. All of a sudden I am. What happened? Yeah. Reevaluating your life. That's all can be great, but it's also stressful.
Yeah. Kids going on empty nest.
Yes. Yeah. Where am I now? What's next? Who am I? Where am I going? That's disorienting, right? That can cause.
Should I not ask myself that every day?
Right.
Yeah.
What am I?
Who am I?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I work with, a lot of women in midlife and older, and that's always one. It's like I woke up and I'm like, looked in the mirror and went, how'd I get here?
Yes.
Who am I? What am I doing now? And it does bring on the anxiousness of what will this second season look like? What will it bring? And now, truthfully, a lot of people, there was a survey done and by Dr. Michael Greger, and he literally asked people, how long do you want to live? And do you know he was shocked by their answers, because people were like 70.
Really?
Yes, maybe 80. And he's like, I thought people would be like 100, 110, because they're so nervous about their health, their finances. Will they have both in great enough health, great enough finances to live well past those? So they do want to live past it, but their answer reflected their nervousness and their anxiety about the reality that could be.
Wow. That makes sense. I hadn't heard about that. Right. Not seeing, right. there's not seeing the future, right? So where am I really going right now? The kids are out of the house, or like, what do I want to do with my career? Or, and then actually seeing a future, but maybe you don't have the resources or the social support. Yeah, that's really scary. But it's interesting that people kind of
when they were at
age. Wow.
yeah. Yeah, so it was interesting, but I get it, like especially the finance thing. It's like we do have all this ability now to live longer.
Yes.
What does that mean? Does that mean, how long do we have to work? Can we work? Will someone hire us? All those questions come into play. So it was very interesting and just kind of feeds back into the anxiety. I'm curious if you have a loved one, like my son is severe social anxiety, like and the days of gaming do not help. How can we support people? Like, is there a way? And if there's a way, how can we support people who have that or any kind of anxiety?
Yeah. I think that one of the most important thing that parents can do for their kids, or that people can do for their partners, is to say, tell me about it. I think parents and partners and friends often say, you're going to be fine, don't worry, because they don't necessarily know what to say. Everything's good. It'll pass. And that's not reassuring to the person. And I think when a child actually says, or an adolescent or a young adult says, I'm really not feeling well, and they may not even know it's anxiety, they're just like, I don't feel right. When a parent is able to say, let's sit down and talk about it, let me hear what your experience is, that's enormous. That is enormous. Then you get an understanding. And then you can figure out, okay, so is this an issue where, my child is at the computer too much and is isolating? Is there something going on at school that I don't know about? Is this something happening with friends? Or so understanding what's going on and reflecting that back to that person. Again, partner too. I hear you. I'm sorry you're having a hard time. It must be really difficult. I can see you're really uncomfortable. And I'm here for you, and I want to help. That sounds so basic, but a lot of people can't do that. And in people's desire to step in and problem solve, we're always like problem solving everything, right? Okay, let me find you a doctor. Let me find you this person. Let me sign you up with kids. Let me sign you up for 5 more, classes. Let me get you, Pilates instruction, and let me get you blah, 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 right? Let me get you in, in a play and play a new instrument. It's like throwing stuff at it. It doesn't mean these things aren't valuable, but what is this all about? So sitting and talking and then coming up with a plan. What I also would say is, if you are a parent or your partner or a friend, go and read about it. Don't pretend. So I don't know anything about anxiety. I never was anxious a day in my life. How do I know? What do you want from me? Blah, blah, blah. Go read about it from a reputable source, of course. I mean, there's so much.
You have any go-to books that you would suggest for a first timer that's curious about anxiety? Or
yeah, I actually, so I'm finding lately people are not reading as many books because people are on social media all the time. It's not that no one reads books, but
my stack is like this big because maybe I'm antisocial. That's what I read.
I have tons of books here, but like, I read them slowly now, where I used to kind of really devour them. But I think that going to reputable, like the Anxiety and Depression Association of America has many wonderful, I'm talking about basic stuff to learn at the beginning. A lot of people don't know. Read the basic facts. This is what anxiety looks like. This is how it happens. Here's, here are the statistics. Here's what you can do. Start with the basics first. Because I think that when people grab for books, I'm all for reading. But sometimes people will grab a book. This is what you need to do. And then if the person reads the book and they're like, I'm a failure. I did all these things in the book and it didn't change my life. It didn't eradicate my anxiety or my depression or, exercise or whatever it is. So I think starting with basic information and then adding from there. There are tons of books. I can, put a list together and you can put it in your
show notes
area on your YouTube page if you want. So basic reading about anxiety. First person narratives about anxiety are really helpful. where people talk about their own experiences. I think that people do well understanding that here's a real person who had these symptoms and here's what they did about it, and they can understand. I think that, that goes a long, long way. So I would recommend that. But yeah, books are really important. I haven't seen any, I'm a big movie buff. I'm not sure I've seen any movies lately about like panic attacks. I mean, The Sopranos was an example of a TV show, which I loved. Everybody loved this show.
For sure.
Tony Soprano, he would pass out. Now that is, by the way, that's an exaggeration, because people come into therapy and go, I feel like I'm going to pass out. I'm like, it's not common. A panic attack isn't necessarily going to cause you to pass out. That's rare. But for dramatic effect, he used to hit the pavement. He used to pass out. But that was an example of sort of like this, whatever you think about Tony Soprano, big tough guy who was having panic attacks. So but I haven't seen any films lately that kind of illustrate. There's a lot of trauma stuff now, which I think is wonderful, because I treat a lot of people with PTSD, and there's a lot of really great stuff to soak up. And by the way, before a couple of years ago, PTSD was an anxiety disorder. It was in the category, because for anyone who has trauma, anxiety is a big symptom in there. There's anxiety, there's depression, there's numbness, there's exaggerated steroid response. But it was an anxiety disorder technically.
That's fascinating.
Now they moved into this category, because a lot of the symptoms are you're on guard, you're feeling in danger, right?
100%.
You're still feeling like it's happening. So
waiting for the shoe to drop.
Waiting for that shoe to drop. That's the same thing with generalized anxiety. Everything's going great. Why am I anxious? Because I'm waiting for the sky to fall now.
Take a little.
Good now, right? What's going to happen next?
I'm outside. The cloud is going to drop on my head.
So, and living in the world in which we live now, where there's so much tumult, and we're inundated with news and social media, and there's just and 24-hour news, again, not helpful, because we're always overstimulated. It just reminds us there's terrible stuff going on in the world. There's also a lot of good stuff going on in the world.
It's so true.
Right?
Do you have a, not to add to anybody's plate, because we don't want to have heightened levels of I didn't do this or I did, but do you suggest ever beginning your day with a practice or ending your day with a practice of some sort, or like when you open your eyes before your feet hit the ground, do a little box breathing, or look at the Post-it note that you put right next on your nightstand that reminds you like you've got this and it's going to be okay. Like, is there any like little practical things that you suggest to people? Because I think for the person that, like I really had to be like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to read my Bible plan and I'm going to sit here, because I was the go.
Yeah.
It was very apparent that I couldn't only sustain that for 40 years, and then I needed to change it.
Right.
So I've been practicing, but I think for me that ritual has really helped. And so I think, but to hear it from a doctor.
So for me, one of the things I do before I go to bed, besides box breathing, is I take out a piece of paper, or I can do it. I talk to Siri on my phone, and I literally, it takes like 40 seconds. I take a pen. It's old fashioned, I know, but it works.
I love them.
Okay. And I literally say, like, where am I? And I go, and I just start writing. Today was blah, blah, blah. I feel it's not journaling, because it's not a thoughtful, right? Like, I'm just saying blah, 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 blah. Today was an okay day. I got really anxious, or I screwed this up or whatever, or, I'm happy I did this or whatever. And I'm really worried about blah, 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 blah. And I write for like about 40 seconds. And then I rip it up, and I basically taking it out of my head, all that sort of monkey brains, take it out and I'm transferring it on the paper. You can also talk to Siri. I put the microphone on and go blah, 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 blah. And then I do my breathing. In the morning, I've learned, like, again, different things work for different people. Some people can get up and do yoga right away. Some people can meditate. Some people can do their daily mantras, gratitude, whatever it is. I set my alarm earlier now. This is what works for me. And I I get my coffee. I only have a half a cup because caffeine is not good for anxiety. So I have a half a cup because I love coffee. And I just sit there and I literally just give myself time to ease into the day. I don't force myself, all right, ready, set, go. Because, once you're out of the bed and you're doing everything, the day's already, it's going. So I give myself a little time. I snuggle with my pets for a while, extra time, that's the tactile piece. And I just kind of breathe and I look out the window. I live in New York City, but I look at the sun, I look at the clouds, and I just take it down before I start my day. That's actually been helping really a lot for me. Other people go for walks in the morning, get out of the house, go get your vitamin D and go on a silent walk. So I think doing something early in the day is really important. Not everybody has the luxury of that. Some people roll out of bed and the kids are screaming and you have to make breakfast or you already have to get on a Zoom call or whatever it is. Right now, I have the luxury of doing that and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So Nancy, what do you do?
I have been in a practice now for about a year. I get up, I have my coffee, and I actually read Bible plans in the morning that lean more towards a little bit on the motivation side, and then I'll read like a passage, and then I journal. Whether it's sometimes my journaling is one line, sometimes it's much longer. It just I don't put any must have this many words in what I'm going to say today. And I do that in the morning. My dog sits with me when I do it. It's peaceful for me. I have to be very careful that I don't segue into work. Because
right.
If I segue into work, then I don't go do my workout. It's like, then I'm anxious all day because I didn't do my workout. So I have to be very, very intentional. When I'm done with my journaling, when I'm done, I get up. I allow myself the space for what I need to do there. But I was sort of rolling over and going, well, while I'm here, because I read everything on my phone or, my computer has where I journal. I have an online journal. So it's very easy to go, I'll just go check my email.
How do you avoid not doing it? Right.
And
I do that.
It's hard. It's really hard. But if I do, I go down the rabbit hole and then it's whatever time. Now I'm stressed because I love to work out, but now I'm like, I can't be like, I got to get my workout and everything just falls behind for me. So I'd be very strategic with my morning, but I roll out and I have my coffee and my time with, my time with God, but other people might meditate or, whatever works for them.
That sounds great. Alicia, and you meditate?
Well, I was just sitting here like going, I think we should have like an adopt anxiety program because I was like, ever since I got my cat, he's forced me to be in bed because he's an orange tabby rescue, like meow, meow.
Oh yeah, you can't. I have rescues also. You can't ignore them. They're like
the second I sit down, he's like, and I'm like, oh, good,
isn't that like
yeah. But yes, so the change used to be up and at him and at the gym. I was the go for eons. I'm a recovering go-goer. But I now really focus on, social media was starting to give me anxiety and compare. I realized like my personality, it's too much because it was just too much. So I pretty much don't go on very often. So for me, it's been great. I get up and I have my Bible plan set. And one of them is to abide, and it's a meditative one. So the Bible plan itself is actually a meditation.
Oh, that's
and they're really short, from 2 minutes to 10 minutes. So it's kind of nice because if I'm feeling anxious about time, I can just breathe for 2 minutes and pet the cat and then go. And then other times I really do. I was journaling, but I was judging my journaling and I was having a hard time. So brain dumps in the evening are easier for me because it's almost like I expect it. Where in the morning I was having like, you should be creative and have all that. And then in the morning I'm like, what am I even writing? This is dumb. And then I'm writing, this is dumb. I don't want, look at our kitty in the background.
Sorry.
I love it. So it was
sometimes that happens during my patients. Great. People know my cats.
I love it. So I think knowing yourself too is also key. That was one of the like knowing when
Yes.
what brings you anxiety. And if a morning routine makes you anxious, shoot for an evening one. Or, that was kind of my thing.
Yeah.
I agree, but then, I agree with both of you. But then again, when you get on social media or you read a book and they're like, if you do this, and this is why I always tell patients, like, you might see a 30-second thing on social media. It's a great idea probably, but it may not work for you. Just because it doesn't work for you doesn't mean there's something else wrong with you. So you're talking about being honest with yourself about what your anxiety triggers are. And that's actually a really good way for people to begin their anxiety journey. What literally
not where I thought I would be in my life.
Right. So I get anxious if there's too much news. I've cut back on my news consumption. I want to know what's going on in the world, but I don't need to be inundated with it. So I know that now. I'm like, I can't watch as much news as the next person, and I don't get mad at myself about them. Like, I know what's going on basically, and that's good enough for me. The other thing is, there are some people who can go out to parties every night of the week or work events, networking things. And there are people, I think, Nancy, you talked about this earlier, people get social anxiety and you're exhausted. Or the holidays, that's a big time. People have one party after the next, and they never can reset their nervous system. And then they're just absolutely exhausted. And it's saying, one party is enough for me. Like, I can say no to certain people. Some people I can't say no to, but just being aware of what your triggers are, how you're wired, and respecting that, being mindful, respecting where you're at. Nobody is perfect. We are not automatons. We're never going to be robotic. We don't want to be. I don't think.
No.
So we have to be real about how we are. We're all wired.
That's key. That's smart.
It's all about the overactive nervous system. That's anxiety. And but there are so many ways to manage it now. And we've talked about a number of ways, whether it's writing or religion, praying or meditating or just sitting quietly, or pets, I think, are like great anxiety.
That's my go-to.
Yes, right? They never let you. We
got a horse in the backyard. Like, come on, guys.
Sitting on my lap right now. So.
It's like they have a whole part of their body that's kind of worn thin where you're petting them. It's like, okay, I feel better now.
I just watched The Inside the Mind of a Cat on Netflix, and I was so enthralled. And I came home and I'm like, Root Beer, I got you a box. And like his whole personality's changed, and we're doing like the slow blinking together.
Yes, the slow. I love that.
God. I'm like, I'm having so much fun. I forgot.
But the thing is, cats get anxious too. Cats map out the room in their brain. So like if you move like a piece of furniture, a lot of us like to, move furniture around or redecorate. But if you move a chair around, they get freaked out because they've mapped out the whole room in their head. And so they get freaked out when you move it. Whereas with the dog, as long as the dog is with you, they're happy. You can do anything. They're pretty much okay, except for maybe fireworks or certain loud noises. But the cat, it's all about the environment. So, but they can get thrown off too.
Yeah. I think we could all talk about anxiety
forever.
I'm so glad I got to meet you. I had no idea. I just learned so much about myself.
I keep having things that come up. I'm like, I could ask this, and I can mention this, and she could share this.
I'm like, we already took a precious hour away from.
Oh my God, I didn't even realize it. Yeah,
it's flown, but I literally just looked over. I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'm like, we still had all this.
It's all about promoting. We have anxiety. It's painful. It's uncomfortable. There are things you can do about it. And there's some things you can't do about it. And there has to be some acceptance, like anything else in life. Acceptance about certain things you can't change.
Right.
And I think that's really important. And to try to reinforce ourselves for the things that we are, and not criticize ourselves for the things we're not.
Oh my
gosh. A little grace.
Yeah. A little grace.
Yeah. Tough when you're an overachiever, I guess. Too.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right.
Nancy's always like, what was last year? I was like, I got to go run the Grand Canyon twice. Do something to myself.
I'm like, I'm going for a walk.
I'm doing nothing. That's an achievement. I
get anxious meeting Alicia in person because she's going to be like slacker.
Yes.
Well, here,
Look, she's nodding. Yes. She's like, yes, you should be
you
nervous.
see, this is, come on.
Anyway, oh my gosh. Thank you so much for
Thank
giving
you guys.
us
This
time.
was, I learned some stuff too, and this was really fun too. Thank you
so
for making
happy.
me so comfortable, because I get really anxious, and you made it really
Oh,
nice.
you were fabulous. Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you
So
so much.
as a reminder, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Lovey.
Oh,
Nancy and I have a
wanted to
delay, so we talk together at the same time all the time.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Everyone knows.
Yeah.
Oh, they can find you on Instagram, and we'll make sure we put it in the show notes, but it's at Dr. Lori Davis. And
Yes,
then,
and I have anxiety too, and they can Google me at drloridavis.com.
okay, perfect.
Love to hear from everyone, and you can shine and be anxious. Remember that.
Yes.
Your life.
Swag coming soon.
Yes. All right. And to our listeners, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We know you're going to get such great information from this podcast. So remember, like, subscribe, and share, especially this one, because we all know you know somebody, if it's not yourself,
Yeah.
probably is dealing with anxiety and could really use this information today. Yes. So thank you very much.
Bye, guys. So nice to meet you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Make it easy.
Bye, you too.